Okay. Well, welcome to Introduction to Academic English and Literature for the second semester. And as I pointed out on our WhatsApp group, it's a little bit different to the first semester because now we are going to be concentrating a lot on writing and using academic materials. So that's what we're going to start with today. And we're also going to be looking at critical questions and asking critical questions of the materials that you are asked to read. So it's going to be quite an interesting class. You'll see that the beginning of the semester is related a little bit to what we did last semester, and then we're going to branch out from there. Now, I'd like to start this class by looking at a number of things that you will need to be able to use during this semester. So I'm going to share a screen with you now of the Moodle page for this class. Sorry, I'm not seeing it here. I wonder why. Let's just have a look. Tell me if you can see the screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So if you are registered, thank you. If you are registered for this class, then you should be able to see now the Moodle page. I just want to take you through a few of the things that you will need for this class. So our aims for this semester. There are 4 aims. First one is to show that you can read and comprehend academic literature. So that means that you are not only being able to read it, but that you are able to understand it. Okay? And understanding it means that you should be able to engage with it. And we're going to talk about how you're going to do that through this semester. Our second aim is to be able to write well-structured and grammatically correct sentences. Now, you learned a little bit about grammar last semester. This semester, we are going to put those rules and techniques that you learned into practice a lot more. And that means that you're going to be writing a lot more than you did last semester. Our third aim is to find and work with academic sources. And we're going to look a little bit at that today. We're also going to be working on how to create bibliographies correctly and also how to cite. Now, if you've never heard of those things, don't worry about it because I'm going to explain all of that very carefully through this semester. And then our fourth aim is to create a basic academic argument. And again, if you haven't heard of this before, don't worry. We're not talking about an argument about people having a fight. We're talking about an argument where certain positions are put forward. So let's say one person says this and another person says that. Who is correct? We have to look at the evidence for person A and for person B and weigh up whether they are correct. That is what an academic argument is. All right. So this semester, you are expected to be devoting at least 3 hours a week outside of class time to this course. So that means you're attending the class now. That doesn't count. You're going to put another 3 hours over and above that. And often it's going to be a little bit more than that, but at least 3 hours a week. If you are putting in those 3 hours, then you will be secure in this course. If you aren't, the likelihood is much stronger this semester than last that you won't pass. There is a lot of work involved in this course, and it's very important work because it's setting you up for your academic career, not only as an undergraduate, but if you want to continue into honors, masters, or PhD, what we are teaching you in this semester is going to serve you for the rest of your academic career. So it's incredibly important. Right, let's have a look at the tasks that you will be doing this semester. I'm going to stop sharing the present screen and show you another one. Please tell me when you can see that screen.
Can see it, sir.
Good. All right, so this document is available on Moodle. You can just get onto it on the Moodle page and it will come up for you. But I just want to go through it briefly so that you know how this course is structured and so that you know what to expect through the semester. I've already gone through the 4 aims, which are over here. You'll see I have listed the aims again. But I want to look at the assessments in this particular part of today's lecture. There are 3 main assessments. There are 3 reading assignments, and they count 20, 25, and 25 marks each. Altogether, those 3 reading assignments constitute 1 major assignment, okay? So they will be cumulative. That means that you add to them throughout the semester. Then you're going to do a bibliography assignment, and we'll look at that in a minute. That's worth 30 marks. And then an essay assignment. That's worth 50 marks. Okay. Now, many students ask me, what does it mean if a module is worth 16 credits? It basically means that you are expected to use 160 hours across the whole semester to complete this course. That's a lot of hours, okay? Basically, it means that you're doing 8 hours a week, 8 to 10 hours a week. It's a lot of studying. And it means that for a lot of this course, you're going to be doing reading, and reading takes time. So reading and writing are going to be a lot of what you're going to be doing in the 160 hours that you devote to this course. Requirements for this module: you're going to have a class every week at 10:30 in the morning, of which this class that you're in at the moment is one of those classes. And you'll be expected to attend those classes every week. And you can attend them personally or in a virtual capacity like we're doing today. I'll always send out the Zoom link on the day of the class, usually at about 9:30 in the morning, so that you can access on time. Now, the important thing is, which is different from last semester, is that occasionally through this semester, I'm going to give you something to do in preparation for particular classes. That means that you have to do that work before the class on Wednesday. So if I ask you to do some reading, I expect that that reading is done by the next Wednesday. So today I'm going to assign you some reading, and I'm expecting that it will be done by next Wednesday. And the reason for this is because in that class, we're actually going to look at that reading from a critical perspective. That means you have to have read it first so that you can understand what we're going to be talking about. And that's very, very important. It will become clear very quickly if you haven't read the work in preparation for the class. And then quite honestly, you may as well not attend the class if you haven't done the reading, because it won't make sense to you. Okay. All of the assessments count towards your overall mark, and there will be no late submissions marked. And the reason for this is because I'm going to mark your work as quickly as possible to give you feedback while the ideas are still fresh in your mind. Also, I'm expecting this semester to review your work with you after I have marked it, so that I can see that you're actually learning from your mistakes. Last semester, I saw, for example, that while I gave detailed commentary on all of your assignments, some of you never improved, you never got better. And that means that you weren't taking seriously what I was saying to you in the comments that I gave to you. This semester, I'm going to be following up to make sure that you are actually improving and doing the work that I'm asking you to do in those comments. How do you assess, how do you submit the assessments? All the assessments must be typed on MS Word, saved, and then emailed to me as an attachment. Although some of you struggled with that last semester, and we decided that you could do those things on a note-taking app on your cell phones, and you can do that this semester again. You can also submit your assignments through WhatsApp. I'm quite happy for that. Most of the communication for this module is going to be done through WhatsApp, and it is also important that you check your university email address on a regular basis, because occasionally official communications about your marks and what have you will come through your university email address or through Moodle. And then what happens if there is an emergency and you cannot submit one of your worksheets or assignments on time? Now, life is interesting in that occasionally we have emergencies in our lives through families or whatever it may be. And I understand that. So when something like that happens, it is very important that you let me know before the submission date. So let's say something is due on Friday. If you tell me on Friday that there is an emergency on Friday, that's too late. Actually, you should have been working on this assignment for weeks beforehand, in which case the emergency on Friday should have no impact on your submission. Also, if you have an emergency earlier in the week, let's say you have an emergency on Monday, but your assignment is due on Friday, then you need to let me know on Monday, sir, this is happening. Please be aware of this, that I may not be able to submit on time. But I have already started on the work, and this is what I've done so far. Okay, it is your responsibility to tell me about these things so that I know and I'm prepared for that. I do all of the marking of assignments in one go over a few days, and it's better for you in the long run if I mark your assessment along with everybody else's, because then you're all on an equal standing. All right. Now, the module outline, we're working on 10 weeks of lectures, although in essence, this semester is 13 weeks, and that gives us a bit of extra time at the end of semester to make sure that your submissions are correct and the best that they can be. So there'll be a buffer area for us to, when, let's say I've marked all of your final essays and there need to be corrections, then those corrections can be done and we can liaise about those things. Okay, so we're going to look at academic literature today. Next week, we're going to look at reading critically. The week after that, we're going to be reading academic literature and making helpful notes, and that's quite an important task. And we're going to be using sources responsibly in academic writing. We're going to be reading some more academic literature, but from a much more intensive perspective. We're going to deal with critical engagement with your work. So remember, I said to you, we're going to have a look at the comments that I give to you and see how you are improving. Then you're going to be looking at how to write an essay, how to use formal tone, and how to formulate an academic argument. We're going to look at how to write a formal introduction for an essay and how to write a formal conclusion. And then we're going to be looking at peer reviewing the drafts of your essay. Now, peer review means that you are going to give your essay to one of your classmates and they are going to read through it and give you comments about it. You will read somebody else's and give them comments about it. That's what peer review in this sense means. So here are your reading, or here are your assignments. Please note, do you see at the top here, I've given what your aims are. So this is what you're going to be aiming to do through these assignments. As I said before, there are 3 reading assignments. One of them is due next week. And then the others are due later on in the semester. Let me just quickly go through this so that you know. You're going to be reading another short story by Nick Mhlongo. Remember, you read a number of those last semester. And you are going to create your own set of questions for this. Now, last semester, I gave you questions. This semester, you have to read the story and see if you can create 10 critical questions around that story. And then you're also going to be providing your own answers in full sentences of those questions. So now it's not me creating the questions, you are creating the questions. Okay. Just read the instructions carefully for the rest of that so that you know exactly what's going to be happening. We can look at that a little bit later on if you've got questions. The second reading assignment requires you to use something that we're going to look at today. That's Google Scholar. You're going to look for a particular topic and find an article and then read it. And you're going to answer the questions carefully here about that article. Okay, so there are a number of things that you have to do here. You have to look for the article and then you have to read it carefully. That's due in September. Your third reading assignment is similar. You're going to look for it online. And I'll show you how to do that today. We'll go through these again during the semester. And then you are going to read through these questions and answer them. That's due in late September. Then you've got a bibliography assignment. Don't worry if you don't know what a bibliography is at the moment. That will be explained. There are the aims for what you're going to be doing. And this is exactly here what you need to add into your bibliography. Okay, so it tells you exactly how many of each thing you need to provide. Okay, that's in mid-October. We will be going through these kind of things in class. So you will be taught how to do this. And then your final assignment, and this is the biggest assignment of the semester, is to write a short essay. And that's your aims here are listed carefully. You're going to write a 2-page essay. It's very short, but it has to be very well done, about the gendered nature of eschatomia, which I'm sure you've heard of. If you haven't, you will learn about it during the semester because we're going to be reading about it. Okay, and that's due in early November. So those are your assignments or your assessments for the semester. Are there any questions so far? No questions. All right. I'm going to go back to the Moodle page just to show you some things. Those assessment tasks that we were looking at, you can download them by clicking onto there, and the due dates for your assessments, you can click on there and it will show you what they are. If you need to revise anything that we talk about in this class today, you'll be able to go and watch a little video on the same sort of thing that we're doing today. It's a video which I created a couple of years ago, but I'm going to give a little bit more detail in this lecture than is available on this video. The video, which is helpful, is in English and in Zulu. So if there's something that you don't understand in particular today, you can go and re-look at that on Moodle. Now you'll see that for each week I've given instructions. And so here you'll see the instructions for next week. To prepare for your class, you have to read that story nailed. And then we're going to be talking about how to create critical questions about a story or about literature that you read. So that is to assist you in your assignment that's due on the 27th of August. So it's very important that you read that story, that you highlight any words that you don't know, because if you don't know some of the words and what their meaning are, you won't understand the story fully. Okay. You will need to make a list of those words and their meanings on a separate page, and you're going to be handing those in to me. Okay, so that's quite important. If you're not going to be in the class live, then you need to send that to me as an email or WhatsApp. And then also you need to start making notes about any details in the story which seem interesting to you. What stands out to you in the story? What are the themes of the story? Which things do you resonate with? Okay, so you're going to make notes about that story by Nikamhlongu. You can access the story over here. If you click on it, you'll see that it opens up the story for you and you can download it and read it. Okay, so it's all available on Moodle there. Here again, week 3, you'll see that there are instructions for you and a video for you to watch. Each week usually has some kind of video or instructions, and you'll see that everything is very carefully laid out for you so that you can see what to do. As we go through the semester and as I record the lectures that we are doing, like today's one, I will also put those up on Moodle for you to revise if you need to go back and read or watch through these things again. Okay. Any questions so far? Can you please indicate on your screen with a little thumbs up? If you go into the thing that says reactions and you click on the thumbs up, you'll see it comes up like that. Can you indicate to me if you have been onto the Moodle page already for this course? If you have already been onto it, please can you put the thumbs up? Good. For those of you who haven't been onto the Moodle page, please take some time to go and have a look at it so that you can familiarize yourself with what we're going to be doing this semester. Okay, don't worry. Eventually that little thumbs up just disappears of its own accord. You don't need to take it down. Okay. Now, let's start with the actual learning that we are going to do today. And I'm going to share a screen with you, which is a PowerPoint. All right. If you have questions while we're going through this, please feel free to ask me, okay? Anytime you have a question that you want to ask about what we're talking about, please either put up your hand, and you can do that with the little bar at the bottom, which gives you responses, or it's called, what is it called, reactions, or you can just unmute yourself and speak to me. Okay, so if you have a question, please feel free to ask. So today we're looking at reading and understanding academic literature. Now, when you are reading or preparing for any kind of essay or research, which you will be doing through your academic career here at UKZN, where do you find information that is going to be helpful for you as you write your essay or as you write up your research? Now, my guess is that for many of you, your first inclination would be to go onto the internet. And you would type in the topic of your essay and see what Google gives you. Well, that is one way to start. But when we are working in academia, we are hoping to find information that is reliable. Now, I wonder how many of you in the past have tried to work out if the information that you receive on social media is true or not true. Have any of you heard of fake news? You can unmute yourself.
Yes.
We have.
Can any of you think of examples of fake news that you have come across? You can tell me if you've heard of some fake news. I'll give you an example. I'm sure all of you are familiar with news around the vaccination for COVID-19. How many of you have heard a story that the vaccination that you receive has a little microchip in it that governments want to implant into you through the vaccination? How many of you have heard that?
Yes.
You've heard it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
How many of you have heard that certain vaccinations change your DNA. How many of you have heard that? Anybody? Now, those two
No,
things,
sir.
that I've spoken to you about now, the changing of the DNA and the inserting of a microchip. Can anybody tell me if those two stories are true? Anybody?
Don't technically know, sir.
You don't technically know. Yeah. The point is, many people, when they hear something on the news, would go to Google and ask Google if it is true. So here's the problem with social media. Also, they might go to Facebook and ask their friends, or go to WhatsApp or Instagram or Twitter to see what people are saying. So you could do that, and you would get a variety of answers. The interesting thing about social media and the way that it is designed is when you start looking at a particular topic, the computer begins to work out, or these things called logarithms, work out what kind of things you favor and what kind of political dispositions you have. So what kind of political ideas you usually have. So when you are searching on Google, or when you chat to your friends through WhatsApp or through Facebook or Instagram, everything that you talk about, a computer absorbs and takes little bits of information there to see what kind of things you like to talk about. So if you've spoken a lot about politics, it's going to see what kind of politics you talk about. If you talk a lot about hair products, then it will look at the kind of hair products that you look at. If you're looking at skin lightening creams, for example, it will look at what kind of skin lightening creams you will look at. And based on that information, it gives you more information that is similar to that, because it wants to give you something that you like. And also, usually, social media is designed to favor advertisers. So if you talk about things that you like to buy, it's going to give you adverts for other things that you like to buy. You may have realized this, that if you're speaking to somebody on WhatsApp or through Facebook or Instagram, that if you speak about particular products, in the very short future after that, you start to get adverts that are related to that particular product or other things that are similar to it. So computers are very clever at working these things out about what we like and how to sell things to us. And that's also how it can be used to create political ideology as well. So these things are not neutral, and they're not necessarily giving you accurate information. So let's say you have been speaking to people about conspiracy theories. That means things that are possibly true, but not necessarily true. If you do that a lot, the computer knows that. And so if you ask the computer, or through Google, or if you speak to your friends about things like the vaccination and the implanting of a microchip, it is likely that the computer will give you answers that are about that. So things like it will give you articles which speak about that in the positive sense. So yes, let's say you might get an article that says, I can prove that there is a microchip in the Pfizer vaccine, or something like that. And you read that and you believe it because you've read it from a reliable source. So my question to you is, how do you work out if a source is reliable or not? If we know that computers feed us, or the internet feeds us, information that is not necessarily reliable, how do we check if it is reliable or not? Does anybody have any ideas? How do we check if something is reliable? Any ideas?
Would you not look at like books or studies about the actual thing?
Okay, that's one place to start. Okay, so you could look at a book.
So like if you want to find out more about the vaccine, you would books or studies about things. So like if you want to find out.
Correct. Yes. So you might go to a book by an expert who knows about vaccines. Okay, or you might go to a medical journal and see what doctors are saying, or about what scientists are saying about what a vaccine does. Okay, so you might go to a book that is published. So when a book is published or a journal is published, it goes through a number of processes to verify certain things. So in academia, for example, if you were to publish a book, it would have to go through a peer review system. And that means that other experts would look at your work and say, based on what I know and what I've discovered, I can verify that this is likely to be true. Okay, so other experts look at that and they decide whether it is likely to be true or not. Once they have given their stamp of approval, and usually it's 2 or 3 experts have to look at things, then the publisher says, fine, we will publish. Okay, so in a sense, that publishing routine helps to establish whether something is true or not. But that does not necessarily mean that the views expressed in a book are completely accurate. It simply means that the people who have reviewed the work understand parts of it, and in their scientific perspective, they can verify that it is likely to be true. Okay. If something is not published, if something, and think about this, do you know that anybody can put anything up on the internet? And they don't need to verify what they're writing. They can simply put it up there. Okay, even you can put things up on the internet, and maybe you have even. Okay, so it means that if you find those kind of things, it's not necessarily certain that what you read there is true or not. Okay, so we can verify things by asking experts to give their opinions of them. And anything that's published in an academic book has the opinion of certain people behind it, saying we can certify that this is likely to be correct. Okay. If you read something in the newspaper, do you think it's necessarily correct?
So doesn't it also depend like on the evidence? Like the newspaper could say that there was an accident and there's actual footage and people saying that there was an accident. So it goes with evidence. Correct.
Yes. So evidence is very important. You bring up an interesting point, Tamia, because I want you to consider something, and maybe you guys are not quite old enough to be aware of this, but how many of you have heard of Marikana and the shooting and killings at Marikana? It has recently been commemorated. Have you heard of that?
Yes, sir.
You have?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in that situation, there is a lot of footage and there is a lot of evidence from people who were there. Okay, so you have eyewitness evidence. But the interesting thing is when you watch that footage and when you listen to the eyewitness accounts, it is very difficult to work out what actually happened. Even with all of the evidence, sometimes we have to interpret that evidence. We have to try and work out what it means. So evidence of its own accord does not necessarily give us the full truth, even if it's video evidence. Okay, sometimes video evidence is difficult to work out exactly what's going on, as in the case of Marikana. Okay, so evidence points in a particular direction, and whoever is looking at that evidence needs to make a choice or a decision based on that evidence. So yes, evidence does give us pointers towards what is accurate or not. That's a very important aspect of finding what is truth and reliable. Okay, and academics try to find evidence about things, collect that evidence into one place, and then based on that evidence, make some kind of decision about what is likely to be right or wrong. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay, so just because you have evidence doesn't mean that it supports a particular viewpoint. You would have to gather evidence and look at that evidence carefully to see what that evidence is actually saying. So for example, at Marikana, some of the evidence that is used is that people who were shot in the back. And what that tells you is they weren't running towards the people who were shooting, they were running away from the people who were shooting. So that can tell us that they were running away in fear. Okay, so they were trying to get away. But it could also indicate a number of other things. So if they were shot in the stomach or in the front of their bodies, it would show that they were aggressive, perhaps, and they were coming towards those who were shooting. So you can see how evidence can show you certain things. It can give you an idea of what is happening. Okay. All right, so when we are dealing with writing academic essays, we are wanting to look for reliable evidence. And reliable evidence, as Lysandra pointed out, is often available in books or in journals, academic journals. And so I'm going to show you a little bit about where to start to look for reliable information if you are doing some kind of academic research. The first place to start always is the UKZN library. Now, at the moment, the music library is not open for you to access because of COVID. But that doesn't mean that the library is not accessible at all. In fact, there are lots of things that are reliable information that are available through the library website online. So I'm going to show you that now. I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint for a moment, and I want to now show you the internet. So we're going to go to, I'm going to go back to Google. And there's the Google homepage, right? What you would normally see. So you would type in here UKZN library. When it comes up, you click onto it like that. That's what you will find. Okay, that's what it looks like. There are a number of things that you can do here. So let's say that the topic for your for an essay is music in South Africa. So there it is. I've written here music in South Africa. And then you press enter, or you say search, and the computer comes up with a whole lot of, this is what it would come up with over here. It would come up with all of the books that the library has that are related to that topic. So the very first one that it comes with is AIDS, Politics and Music in South Africa. And we'll see that that book, it says here, it's a print book. So that means that it's available in the library, not online. It was published in 2011, so it's only 10 years old. So it's fairly new material. And it shows you University of KwaZulu-Natal Library, the Eleanor Bonar Music Library. That means that it's in our music library on Howard campus. Who knows what this little, sorry, what this little number here tells you? Does anybody know what that number means? Anybody? Okay, so this is called a Dewey number. You don't need to remember that it's called a Dewey number, but it is important when you actually visit a library. So libraries, the books in libraries are all classified according to a number so that they can be all put together in the same sort of subject materials, so that all the books about music are together, all the books about mathematics are together, and all the books about English are together. So it just means that when you are looking for something, it's much easier to find them if they've been classified than if all the books were just mixed up. Okay, so this little number here tells you where to go in the library to look for this. So when you go to the music library, you would look for all of the books that are in this area, 362.1969792, and then with these MACN. And you'll find that if you go to the library, on the dust jacket, so on the edge of the book like this, okay, that's the back of the, or the spine of the book. Usually over here, there's a sticker with that number on it, so that when you're looking at the shelf, you can see the number. That shows you where this book is, and you can then locate the book easily. Okay, so this is called the Dewey number. It helps you to locate the book in the library. You'll see that all of these, do you see over here? Here's a Dewey number here. All of these books have a Dewey number. There's the Dewey number over here. Okay. Now here's an interesting title, Kwaito's Promise, Music and the Aesthetics of Freedom in South Africa. So some of you would probably listen to Kwaito and you will be familiar with the genre. Somebody's written a book about that that was published in 2016, only 5 years ago. So this is very recent knowledge. Okay. Now the nice thing about this particular library website that we have is that it gives you a summary of the book so that you can see if it is actually helpful for you or not. So you can read through that and see if it is helpful. And we can click on show more and it gives us even more information about it. Okay. So that's helpful for you if you are looking for a particular source. And if you wanted to speak about music in South Africa generally or specifically, that would give you some kind of idea. Okay, so you can go on to the library website to look for books in the library, but you can also go to the library website to look for other things. So let's have a look at this thing called Google Scholar. And if we click on it here, and then if we type here music in South Africa, and we say, and we click on it, you'll find that it gives us all sorts of things that are available online, that are linked to online sources. So all of these articles or books are related to music in South Africa. And usually it's much broader than what our library has. You'll see that it says to the left if it's a book. Okay, so these two are books. All right. And if it isn't a book, then it's usually a journal article. Do you see the South African Journal of Musicology? And this article is the teaching of music in South Africa. And if we clicked on it, it would then give us that article. Sometimes you have to access the article. There it is. Okay. If you're on campus, then you will be able to access the journal articles usually without having to go through a verification process. But if you're off campus, you would need to put in, it usually comes up with a little prompt box that says, please provide your login details. And that's where you use your student number and your password, okay? Then you would be able to download that article and read it, or you could read it online. You see, here is the download button, or here is the print button. Okay. So if you're looking for reliable information, it's important to look at reliable sites. And one of the reliable sites that we use is our library webpage. Okay, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint slides now. These PowerPoint slides I will put up onto Moodle so that you can get these links if you want them, but otherwise you can simply on Google write UKZN library and you'd be able to get into the library. Okay. I've set here the Google Scholar, which we've looked at now, and then also the UKZN Music Library Guide. Now I'll just open that for you so you can see it. If you can just tell me, please, if you can see this web page, or is it still on the PowerPoint?
It's still on the PowerPoint, sir.
Thank you. Right, let me just see if I can get it to show you the web page. Okay. Can you see the web page now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the nice thing about this particular guide is that it's called a LibGuide, library guide, and it's specifically for music. Okay. So this gives you an introduction to our music library, and it gives you all sorts of information that you might need. Okay. So it speaks about our books, our databases, and that becomes useful, particularly when you're doing honors, masters, and PhD. It gives a list of those dissertations and theses from masters and PhD students. So if you do a master's degree or PhD, you have to write a thesis. And those theses that are presented for examination once they've been passed are put into the library. So that's considered new research. And we often use that. As you'll see, we're going to be using one of those theses in this course this semester. Referencing, we are going to be learning about referencing this semester. But if you need manuals about it or how to use things, they are available here. The journals that we have, online tutorials, and research support. We have all of these things available for our music library. And I don't know if any of you have met Mbongiseni, who is our specialist music librarian. Probably you haven't met him because you've not had access to the library. But as soon as COVID is under control and the campus is open and libraries are open again, you may see Mbongiseni, and he is the person that you would go to if you were looking for specific materials in the library. You can also click on here to email him if you have specific questions about the music library. Okay, so this is called a LibGuide, and you can get the details from the PowerPoint slides, which I will share on Moodle. Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint slides again?
Yes, sir.
Good. All right. Now I've spoken about the Dewey numbers already. So I've shown you where to find the Dewey number on the website and how to use them. So this is just an introduction to that. All right, so let's talk about knowledge. What is knowledge? So when we talk about knowledge in a university, we're talking about information. Okay, what you would typically call information. And research creates new knowledge or new information. So when we look in detail at particular things, we find new information about them. And this is particularly true in science. So those who are scientists look at the way that chemicals react with each other, or how the weather changes, or whatever it may be. They look at these things carefully and interpret them, and then make or create new knowledge or information around these things. So over the last 200 or 300 years, the amount of information that research has generated is incredibly large. So we have access to huge amounts of information and knowledge. And every year, new knowledge is created by people who are doing more and more research. Okay. For those of you who carry on through academia to master's and PhD, you will create new knowledge as you go along. Now, our job as lecturers is to teach students how to use knowledge. Okay. So I've just said to you that all of you have access to huge amounts of knowledge, and you hear knowledge through the news, you hear or can access knowledge through the internet or through books that you have or through social media. But as we've discussed, not all knowledge is true. So how do we test if it's true? We've spoken about that a little bit. At university, for knowledge to be true, it has to be tested or proved. And then it has to be verified. And I've spoken about how we do that. How is knowledge tested? Well, in the academic world, we do it through experimentation. And if you've done science at school, physical science, you might have actually done some experiments to see if something is true or not. So if you put two chemicals together, you can see if they react or in which way they react. And you can see if that is, if it's been reflected accurately in what people have said about it. But you can also analyze things to see if they are true. So usually in the humanities, and music is in the humanities, we look at things deeply, okay? We look at them, we take them apart, we see how they've been put together, and then we talk about what those component parts are and what they mean, and then we put it back together to say, this is what this thing means, or what it can mean. So that's analysis. And then we use peer review. Now, peer review is something that we're going to come across a little bit in this course. It means those people who are equal to you in knowledge use. So if you are a professor at a university, your peers are other professors, people who have also got expert knowledge. If you are a student, your peers are those people who are students at the same level as you are. So your peers would be all of your fellow students in the foundation year, all of you who are in foundation year. When you are a first year student, that body of students will be much bigger, because then you are peers with all first year students in the humanities. Okay, the foundation classes are much smaller, but as you go through first, second, and third year, you are peers with a much greater number of people. So peers are those people who have pretty much the same knowledge level as you do. And when you give something peer review, it means that those people who are at the same knowledge level agree that this is likely to be true. So if professors agree that something is likely to be true, because they've got expert knowledge, it is more likely that the information is reliable. Okay. Now, academic knowledge, that which has been peer reviewed, often has to be published so that other people can see what that is. Okay, and so academic knowledge is published in books, in journals, and is presented at academic conferences. Okay, so we're not talking about, when we're talking about books, by the way, we're not just talking about books that you can buy at bargain books or something like that. These are not novels or things like that. These are specifically academic books, and we're going to look at some of those today in our class. Okay, and usually these books are fairly expensive because they don't make lots of them. They don't publish a whole lot of them. Usually a run of 250 or so are made of each book, instead of thousands of copies. So popular books, which are novels, usually sell hundreds of thousands of copies, and that makes them much cheaper. So the stories that we read by Nick Mhlongo, for example, are not academic literature. That is popular literature. Okay, so that has not been peer reviewed. So here's something very interesting that I want to discuss with you. Last semester, you remember we read that story about Avalon Cemetery. Do you remember it? And in that story, there was a character who was very much anti the ANC. And he said that the ANC was colluding with whites and white monopoly capital to ensure that Robert Sobukwe's memory was completely erased and that Mandela's was put in its place. Do you remember that story? Yes, no, maybe? Yeah, okay, some of you.
Yes.
So the important thing there is that that particular short story is a story. It is not a verifiable fact. When many of you did the assignment for that, the writing assignment, and I asked you, what shocked you? Many of you said that you were shocked to find out that Mandela had not been in prison all the time, that he'd actually been in a hotel. Do you remember that was part of one of the things that the man said, that he was actually not in prison for all of the time, but that he'd been in a hotel for part of that time. And you were also shocked that, that Mandela had died long before he was buried, and that they'd chosen the burial date specifically to change history. So the important thing to remember here is that is a fictional story. What Nick Mhlongo wrote there is not verifiably true. He created that and put those words in the mouth of his character. The character is not a real person in that story. That person is not real. It is a person he imagined in his mind, and he put those words in the mouth of that person. Okay? So what he says about Mandela and what he says about Sobukwe are not verifiably true. They are aspects of a story. Okay. If we wanted to find out if they were true, we'd have to do an investigation. We'd have to go and look for evidence of that. And once we'd found that evidence, we'd need to analyze it. Then once we'd analyzed it, we'd need to send it to other peers to check if they can verify that they think that this is possibly true. And only after that can we make a definitive proclamation about it. Okay. So I'm not talking about popular books here. I'm talking about academic books, academic journals, and academic conferences, because you can also have non-academic conferences too. So you can just have a conference of people that are coming together to speak about a common topic. But an academic conference is where you have found particular evidence of something, you've analyzed it, and you are now presenting it to a wider audience. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, so let's talk about academic books. Academic books are usually peer-reviewed, and there are different types of academic books. There are books called monographs, and this is usually a book on a very specialized topic by one expert author. It's usually by one expert author. Do you know what mono means? Mono means one. Okay, so a monograph is by one expert. Then you get books of essays, and these are collections of essays on a related specialized topic by several expert authors, not just one, but by a group of expert authors, and it's usually edited by one or two people who are experts as well. Then you get textbooks. Okay, and textbooks are basic information on a specialized topic, and they're usually intended for students. Okay, so these books are important because they give an introduction to a specialized topic. And then you get subject-specific reference books. Now, reference books are things like encyclopedias or dictionaries, that kind of thing, where they give you information about the words that are used in that particular subject, or about the concepts that you would encounter in that particular subject. So let's look at these a little bit more carefully so I can give you some examples. So a monograph is a book on a specialized topic by one expert author. Now, the examples that are on this PowerPoint, unfortunately, I don't have access to because they're on campus and I'm at home at the moment. So I'm just going to give you some that I have at home, that I have available at home. So here is an example of a monograph. I'm just going to put it close up to the, there we go, to the camera so you can see what it's called. The Music of the English Parish Church. That's the title of the book. Okay. When it says English, it means in Britain. Okay. Not people who are speaking English, but the country of England. Okay. So it's a very specific thing here. It's looking at music in England, and a parish church is a small church. Okay. So it's looking at music in small churches in England. A very, very specialized topic. And it's by one expert author. The author is listed just underneath there. His surname is Temperley. His first name is Nicholas Temperley. He's an expert on music in small churches in England. And this book is his contribution to knowledge. So he's done a lot of research on that particular field, and he's written about it in this book so that other people can access that information. So this is an example of a monograph. One author, one specialized topic. Okay. Then we get collections of essays. And this is where a group of academics or scholars come together to write about something common, but from different perspectives. Okay. And usually it is edited or brought together by one or two people. So I've got an example of that here so that you can see. Let me just put it up so that you can see. Here's the title of the book, Making Congregational Music Local in Christian Communities Worldwide. So this is also about music in churches, but it's talking about local music. So it's not talking about internationally used music, but local music and in congregations. So it's not talking about music that we would perform in a concert, for example. This is about music that involves people in a group. Okay, and you'll see at the bottom, it's edited by 3 people. Monique Ingalls, Muriel, I can't read her surname, it's back to front here when I'm looking at it, and Zoe Sherigan, I think. Now, if we look inside the book, and I'm going to show you, when we look at the contents page, you'll see that there are different chapters, and each chapter is by a different author. Can you see that? If you look at the next one, Part B, you'll see that there are different authors for each chapter. Chapter 7 is by me, you can see there. Andrew John Bethke, I wrote one of these chapters. Okay, but I was writing these chapters, or that chapter, along with other authors. Okay, so here is what we call a collection of essays. It's about a very specialized topic, but it's by many different authors who have specialized knowledge, but from different parts of the world. In fact, all of the authors that contributed to this particular book were from different parts of the world. They were all contributing knowledge from different parts. So I was giving information from South Africa. People were giving information from Europe, from America, from other parts of Africa, from South America, from Australia, from China, and so on. Okay. Then you get textbooks. So here is a music textbook. This is a much more general book. This is called A History of Western Music. Okay, and this is specifically for students. It looks at Western music from a very broad perspective to give all students an introduction to that topic. Okay, so you'll see I've said it's basic information on a specialized topic. It's intended for students so that you can get a broad knowledge. Okay, sometimes it can be by one author. In this case, it's by 3 different authors. Okay, they're all listed at the bottom here. Okay, so those are textbooks. And then you get subject-specific reference books. And I only have one example of that here. I'm going to fetch it for you now, but it is not a music one. It's more to do with Christian theology. So I'm going to show it to you, but you'd have to remember that the ones that you would be dealing with are mostly to do with music. Just actually, I've just seen that I have one for music here at home. Here is a subject-specific reference book. This is called the Oxford Concise Dictionary of Music. So this book contains all of the musical terms that you would probably need if you were going to be speaking about music or writing about music. Okay, it's a thick book, it's a dictionary, got lots of things inside it. This is a subject-specific reference book. Okay, now you probably realize from the kind of books that I have here at home that my own topic where I do a lot of research is on Christian congregational music. So that's why I've got books that are related to that. Okay, but a library has a much wider set of books which looks at all sorts of things. So you'd be able to find in our library information about topics of, like we saw, Kwaito, for example, but also rock and pop music. You'd find things like Skatamia, which we are going to be looking at this semester. You'll find things about classical music. You'll find things about jazz. You'll find things about music from the rest of Africa, from China and Asia, from South America. Our library has a very, very wide variety of books that are specialized about these particular things. Now, academic journals. We've looked at books now, but you also get something called a journal, and they are published monthly or quarterly or once a year. These days, they're usually published online, so it's easier to access them. And they contain peer-reviewed articles, book reviews, and letters. But for our interest, the most important thing is the journal articles. And these are shorter pieces of research, not as long as a book. So they're much easier to read. They're usually about 20 pages long, whereas a book is more like 150 to 200 pages long. So these are shorter pieces of research, which people have looked into very carefully on a very specialized topic. So while a book is on a specialized topic, a journal article is looking at even a narrower and much smaller specialized topic. Okay. And we are going to be looking at a journal article in this semester, so you'll see how that works. Okay. The journals tend to contain very up-to-date research. Okay. And that is because the process of having a journal article published is much shorter than having a book published. So usually it takes about 6 months to a year to have a journal article published, whereas it can take 18 months to 2 years to have an academic book published. So you can imagine that the stuff that you have already found, if it's up to date, is already out of date by the time that it's published, if you are publishing a book. Okay. I don't unfortunately have any journals here at home, but I will see if I can find some pictures of those for you at a later stage. All right, are there any questions about what I have gone through today in this lecture about academic sources? If you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask so that I can hear. No questions? You're all a bit quiet today. Okay. All right. Then I want to just revise what I want you to do for next Wednesday. For next Wednesday, before you get to the class, I want you to have read the story called Nailed by Nick Mhlongo. Okay. You're going to read the whole story. That's not the only thing you're going to do. You're also going to make a note of all of the words that you do not know. So as you're reading it, make a note of each word that you have not come across before or that you don't know the meaning of. When you come across that word, write it down and look it up to see what it means. When you come to class next Wednesday, you are going to give to me that list of words and their meanings. Okay? So you're reading the story Nailed, and you are creating a list of words that you don't know or that you haven't come across before. Okay? And the third thing is you're going to make notes about the story itself. What is interesting to you about the story? Is there anything amusing about the story? Is there anything tragic about the story? Is there anything unusual about the story? Is there anything unexpected about the story? Are there interesting characters in the story? Are there characters that are particularly bad? Or are there characters that are particularly good? Make notes about all of the things that you find interesting about the story. It's a very, well, it is both humorous and tragic, this story. But I think you will enjoy it because it speaks a lot to what we call corruption, but from a slightly humorous perspective. So read that story, look for the words, and make notes about the story, about what you have found about it. In our class next week, we're going to unpack that story very carefully so that we can prepare you for asking critical questions about the story. Are there any questions about that?
So, sir, we mustn't come up with the questions and the answers for next week Wednesday. It's just noting, like listing the words that we don't understand, finding the definitions.
Yes.
And the interesting topics.
Yes.
Of the story. Oh, okay.
If you want to, you can come with your questions, okay? But for those of you who are struggling to come up with critical questions, that's what we're going to look at next week, okay? So you don't necessarily have to have finished because the assignment is only due the following Monday, okay?
Okay.
So I'm wanting to help you to prepare to do that, that particular assessment, okay? So if you haven't got all of those 10 questions, that's fine. Or if you have questions that you've created and you want to check if those are appropriate questions, you can check with me as well, okay? So that class next week is about helping you to read analytically, helping you to come up with appropriate critical questions, and then helping you to be able to answer those critical questions as well. Make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You don't have to come with any questions, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, well, that's all for today then. I wish you everything of the best for this semester. I'm looking forward to working with you through this. It's going to be an interesting time because we are going to be doing lots of interesting things in this. It may seem from the beginning now that this is going to be a boring course because you have to do reading and writing. But I think that the topics that we're going to be dealing with are actually very, very interesting. And you'll see that as we go through them. So have a good day today. And remember that tomorrow we have a class for theory. So just be ready for that. I'll send the Zoom link for that tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody.